My name is Naomi. I was born in 1986 in Oba State into a family that spoke of God but lived deeply with spirits. What I'm about to share is not advice, a lesson, or a story I was told. It is my own experience. What I took part in, what I carried out, and what I regret with all my heart today. For many years, I was involved in tasks whose only purpose was to keep devout Christians occupied, not non believers. People who fasted, sowed seeds, attended night vigils, and cried out to God for breakthroughs. Yet, year after year, nothing changed for them financially. While witchcraft seemed to yield results, first, I know this because I was part of those carrying it out. My father, P. Ezekiel Wee, was a cocoa farmer who never prospered beyond mere survival. My mother sold Gary and palm oil in front of our house. Every morning before school, we prayed. My father recited psalms and my mother sang hymns. But at night, my grandmother, Mama Felicia, practiced something completely different. She was highly respected in our compound, and people greeted her with caution. When children became mysteriously ill, they came to her. When businesses failed, they sought her advice. They called her ABA, the elder woman. I did not realize then that she was in charge of a poverty altar. When I was 16, after WG, my father became ill. No money, no help. Church members prayed, yet nothing improved. One night, Mama Felicia summoned me to her room and said words that would shape my future. God answers prayers, she told me, but it follows laws. If you don't understand the laws, you will pray endlessly. That night, she introduced me to a world where poverty is maintained intentionally, not by accident. I was understanding spiritual attacks on finances initiated near a river on the border of O and the state. With me were three others. Sadi Bello from Erin, Kiadola, from Im and Rashid Law from Abu Mosa. Our instructor was a woman called Madam Ro, known in her own coven as a mother of wealth. She taught us something that shocked me. Most Christians are poor not because God refuses them, but because something else has legal rights over their increase. That was my first lesson in witchcraft. We rarely waste time on unbelievers. Why? Because unbelievers already belong to the system of the world. Christians are the real threat, but not all Christians. We focus on praying Christians who lack knowledge. There was a list in our coven called the productive but empty list. These were Christians who worked hard, prayed sincerely, but never moved forward financially. One of the first names I ever worked on was Brother Samuel Adu, a carpenter in a state. Brother Samuel prayed every morning at 50 orders a.m. His wife, Sister Ruth Adu, fasted every Wednesday. Yet they remained poor for 12 years. Why? Because their author spoke poverty, even while their mouths prayed great for wealth. Let me say this slowly. Poverty is not always a lack of money. Sometimes it is a spiritual policy. We enforced poverty through family altars, words spoken by parents, seed offerings, neutralized at the altar, dreams of loss, repeated financial emergencies. For Brother Samuel, the entry point was his father Palmos, a day who once vowed that no child of mine will ever be richer than me. That vows too. So every time someone prayed for a breakthrough, the vow answered first. Many Christians believe if I pray harder, God will eventually do it. That is a lie that many Christians believe. But witchcraft relies on this delay. As long as you pray without correcting foundations, you become predictable. Unpredictable Christians are easy to keep poor. The first Christian who escaped our poverty net was Sister Batra in Oral State. She prayed like others. But one day she did something different. She began to deal with her foundation deliberately. She returned money she stole years earlier from Mrs. Yanda Ojo. She broke family covenants. She stopped feeding certain altars unknowingly. A moment she did, our grip broke. That was the first time I saw a praying Christian escape poverty suddenly, and it frightened me. After the case of Sister, how witchcraft works through deception, boy and occur, something changed inside me. For the first time since my initiation, I became afraid not of God, but of knowledge. Because once a Christian understands why poverty is enforced, witchcraft begins to lose its advantage. Inside the coven, wealth was never random. Poverty was never accidental. Everything had legal backing. That is the part many praying Christians do not understand. In our cover, there was a physical book kept by Madame Ukiah. We called it Way, the Book of Lack. Inside it were names, families, professions, and spiritual clauses tied to finances. This book was not for unbelievers. Almost every name inside it belonged to church people, choir members, ushers, deacons, prayer warriors. One of the names I remember clearly was Elder Joseph Kohler, a founding member of New Covenant Fire Church in EU State. Elder Joseph was generous. He gave offerings consistently. He sponsored church projects, but his business never crossed a certain financial line. Why? Because of a covenant his late father, Solomon Kerr, entered into during the 1970s to escape poverty himself. But the condition was that his children would struggle. So Elder Joseph's giving did not remove poverty. It fed the altar, enforcing it. That is one of the most painful truths I learned. This part will offend many people, but it must be said, not every offering reaches heaven. Some offerings are intercepted before they arise. We were assigned to churches, not buildings, but altars behind coop. There was a church in Abdon called Mountain of Praise Chapel. The senior pastor was Pastor Elijah Adam. He prayed powerfully. He preached faith. But he had never settled a land dispute involving Chief Shala, which involved manipulation and lies. Because of that unresolved issue, the church altar leaked. So offerings given by sincere members like Sister Kioluni and Brother Phalo, we are redirected spiritually not to enrich witches directly, but to neutralize financial increase. The members worked harder, gave more, fasted more, yet stayed poor. Not everyone was kept poor by unemployment. Some were trapped in endless earning with no accumulation. One such man was Mr. Kuna Jubala, an accountant working in Victoria Island, Lagos. He earned well on paper, but every month emergencies swallowed his salary. Car problems, medical bills, family crisis. We enforced this through dream, manipulation, and ancestral claims tied to his maternal line in Eden State. He common doors that open financial attacks prayed against divorce, but the diver had permission. That is why prayer alone did not stop it. Why many fasting Christians remember poor fasting weakens the flesh. It does not automatically cancel covenant. We actually preferred fasting Christians who did not address foundations. Why? Because they are tired, emotionally vulnerable, and spiritually predictable. One woman's sister patients on Kochi from Aba Abba State fasted almost every month. Yet she never broke free financially. Her problem was not lack of faith. It was a spoken curse from her mother, Mrs. Onyunis Onasi, who once said in anger, "You will suffer the way I suffered." Words are lost in the spirit realm. No amount of fasting can that until it was addressed deliberately. Let me be honest. We did not fear rich Christians. We feared aligned Christians. Christians who corrected foundations, returned stolen money, broke family covenants, stopped feeding wrong altars, obeyed God financially and morally. One such man was Brother Ajani, a mechanic in Aditi. He was poor 4 years. Then 1 year everything changed, not because he prayed harder, but because he obeyed differently. When our assignments failed repeatedly, Madam Rukayat said, "Leave him. His money is no longer ours to touch." That sentence haunted me. The final crack in my loyalty to witchcraft came when we were assigned to delay the breakthrough of Pastor Daniel Ojo, a small church pastor in Ofwait. Pastor Daniel was poor, but his heart was in. When he finally corrected certain foundations, especially unpaid wages, he owed Brother Shala Adini. His finances shifted almost overnight. No ritual could reverse it. That was when I realized something painful. Witchcraft does not create poverty, it only enforces what is legally allowed. Remove the legal ground and witchcraft collapses. What I want poor praying Christians to hear: if you are praying and stay poor, it does not automatically mean God is angry, God is slow, or God is testing you. Sometimes it means something else is speaking louder than your prayers. And until that voice is silenced, effort will not produce abundance. After the assignment involving Pastor Daniel Ojo in Offer completely, something changed inside the company. It was no longer business as usual. Meetings became tense. Senior witches began to argue. Younger members were confused because when witchcraft loses grip over money, it exposes a truth many of us do not like to admit. Witchcraft does not own wealth, it only exploits permission. That realization made me begin to the role of mindset in financial struggles, re-examine every assignment I had ever handled. This part is sensitive, but it must be said not all pastors are agents of darkness, but some pastors become spiritual access points without knowing it. There was a church in Otto State called Glory Harvest Assembly. The pastor was Pastor Moses Oluko. He was sincere. He prayed hard. He loved his members, but he ignored one thing: justice. Pastor Moses owed his assistant, Pastor Kunekin, unpaid allowances for over 3 years. He kept postponing it with prayers and promises. That unresolved injustice created a crack in the church altar. So when members like Sister Few, my ADBC, a trader in Shango, sold seeds for financial breakthrough, the seeds did not rise fully. They leaked. We exploited that leak. Members prayed, members fasted, yet their finances stagnated. When Pastor Moses finally repented publicly and settled the debt, the atmosphere shifted. Within months, testimonies of financial relief began to emerge. Small at first, then steady. That was not coincidence. There are certain dreams which is monitored carefully. Money dreams are one of them. When a Christian dreams repeatedly of losing money, being chased while holding money, collecting old thumbnails, being naked while people laugh, those dreams are not random. They are financial status reports. One woman, Sister Janet, lived in almost. She dreamed repeatedly of counting money only for it to turn to paper. She prayed against the dreams, but they continued. The reason was her father, Mr. Patrick Hooch, who once used her name unknowingly in a business oath. That oath still stood until it was renounced deliberately. Her prayers alone could not break it. The night that shook me deeply involved Mr. Shunit, a pottery farmer in IKEA, Owenstead. He had struggled for years. Loans failed. Chickens died mysteriously. Steps fired up. Then one night, after listening to a teaching, he did something simple but terrifying too. God's protection against spiritual attacks, witchcraft. He called his elder brother, Mr. ID, and apologized for a land dispute that happened 10 years earlier. He returned part of the land. He restored peace that same month. Contracts came from nowhere. We tried to interfere. We could not because peace restore legal access to blessing. No prayer points have done that before. Why some Christians get through suddenly? PE, Opal say it is God's time. Sometimes yes, but often it is because something that blocked years of increase was removed quietly. When a legal block is lifted, increase looks sudden. One woman, Mrs. Ron Bimiley, a favorite seller in Abua, was poor for over 15 years. Then in 1 year, everything changed. Why? She stopped sending money to feed a family shrine after her uncle, Batang Bemaidel, died. That shrine had been collecting support disguised as tradition. Once the feeding stopped, the altar lost power. Her prayers began to work normally. My own deliverance did not come from fear alone. Fear only pushed me to run. Freedom came when truth met repentance. It happened in a queer state in the house of evangelist Joseph A. He did not shout. He did not dramatize. He asked questions. Every time I answered truthfully, something lifted. He led me through restitution. I returned items. I called people. I broke covenants verbally and deliberately. The moment he prayed the final prayer, I felt something leave. Not violently, but quietly. That silence told me witchcraft no longer had a claim. I am not telling you to stop praying. I am telling you to pray with understanding, ask questions, check foundations, correct injustice, break wrong agreements, obey where obedience has been delayed. When those things are fixed, prayer becomes dangerous to witchcraft. Poverty is not always a test. Sometimes it is a message. Listen to it carefully, because when the right things are addressed, witchcraft loses its heat. After my deliverance in Aaron, I did not become rich overnight. I want to say that clearly so nobody misunderstands me. Freedom does not always announce itself with sudden money, something. It announces itself with peace, clarity, and the removal of invisible resistance, but something undeniable changed. For the first time in my life, my efforts began to respond normally. Before, no, walking in financial freedom God's way. Matter how hard I worked, something always swallowed the results. After deliverance, I noticed that money stopped disappearing. Mysteriously, emergencies reduced. Opportunities began to last instead of collapsing suddenly. That was when I fully understood what we used to say in the company. When the drain is blocked, filling the tank makes sense. I want to expose this gently because many people are guilty without knowing. Some Christians feed poverty, altars to unquestioned family traditions, regular support sent to shrines disguised as respected, words spoken repeatedly like, "We are not lucky in this family." Honoring people who are spiritual gatekeepers of limitation, refusing to correct injustice because of pride or fear. One man, Mr. Kayodon from Erodu, Lagos, kept sending money monthly to his uncle, Ganuaraju, for family upkeep. What he did not know was that the uncle used part of that money to maintain a family shrine. Mr. Kayode prayed for promotion for 8 years. The prayers were sincere. The altar was louder. Once the truth came out and the support stopped, resistance collapsed. Why some prayers stop working after a while is another painful truth. Some prayers stop working not because God withdraws, but because conditions change. When a Christian prays against poverty but continues to exploit workers, refuse restitution, hide immoral income, or ignore God's financial guidance, their prayers gradually lose power. In witchcraft, we say that when obedience fades, protection diminishes. That is why some people testify once and then struggle again. I say this with reverence for God. Pastors influence the financial destiny of their members not by controlling money, but by guarding the altar. When pastors overlook injustice, allow manipulation, or build their ministry on pressure instead of truth, the altar weakens. Members pray so and fast, but the altar departs. I witnessed this many times. Whenever a pastor made sincere corrections, witchcraft lost its access to that church's finances. After deliverance, evangelist Joseph A. gave me 3 instructions. Make restitution where possible. Silence certain family influences and obey without argument. Within a year, I moved from mere survival to stability. Within key takeaways and practical steps, 3 years, I was quietly supporting others, not because I was wiser, but because resistance had been removed. Please listen to this from someone who once enforced poverty spiritually. God is not mocked. Prayer is powerful. Witchcraft has limits, but laws matter. When something has legal ground, prayer must deal with the legality, not just plead for mercy. When foundations are corrected, prayer becomes unstoppable. That is why some prayers cannot be resisted by witches. Not because the person shouts louder, but because nothing stands against them anymore. If you are poor and praying, do not give up, but do not assume effort alone will change everything. Ask God questions. Be willing to make corrections. Be willing to obey. Be willing to let go. When these things are set right, witchcraft loses its hold over your life. My name is Know Me. This is my confession, and this is where